All right, Heat Seekers, welcome back. We may look a little different. It's been a minute since you've seen us hanging out together, but draft night is upon us. So we wanted to jump on here and do something crazy. We are going to do a 2-round mock draft. I know we're waiting patiently for the Chiefs to pick, and we just said, what the heck? Let's get going. Let's do this. Craig is back with me. Craig, what do you think about this draft so far? 6 quarterbacks in the first 12. We saw a ton of offense. What's happening here? What are you thinking?
Well, first, I want to make sure everyone is aware that we aren't just going to be talking about IDP, despite what we used to do together all the time. So we'll keep it to offense today. But really, offense has been the story of the draft anyway. 50 or was it 14 picks in a row before there was a defensive player taken. This is the first time, in however many long time decades that something like that has happened. So it's certainly offensive focused at the start of the draft. But then we haven't had a whole lot as far as fantasy relevant players that we're going to be talking about since then. I believe, I don't know the most recent pick if it's in, but Brian Thomas was the only other one at 23 after Brock Bowers won, I think it was 13. So a lot early on, and then people have been sort of twiddling their thumbs in the fantasy space, waiting for some more players to drop.
Yeah, you got to think the Chiefs are probably going with a receiver. I mean, that'd be my guess, but the pick is in, but we're not there yet. So what we're going to do tonight is we're just going to keep it simple. We're going to do a 10-team 2-round mock draft. We're just going to kick it off and roll with it. And we got to fill one spot. We got one spot that's got to be claimed first, but we're going to get this going. The Chiefs pick's going to be rolling in here in just a second. And then we're just going to see what happens. We'll do this again a few times over this weekend so you guys can get an idea of what the draft is doing to draft positions. And then we'll just see what happens. I mean, it's been a fun draft so far. What we've expected has kind of happened. It may be in a little different order, but get some folks in here. And then we'll fire this thing up.
So the draft we're doing here tonight, it's PPR. It's not a tight end premium. There's no IDP players, sadly, for us. Keeping it offensive, but it is going to be super flex. That way we get to talk about those quarterbacks that went early, historically early. So it'll be very interesting to see where a lot of those guys that maybe had been at the back part of the first round, if they sneak up into the earlier part here.
Absolutely. Oh, yep. There we go.
And it looks like Xavier Worthy to the Chiefs.
So that's an interesting pick. I mean, we knew the Chiefs were thinking they needed some wide receiver help, some more wide receiver help. So I don't hate it. I mean, that's a speed guy, although the next in the long line of speed guys that the Chiefs have targeted. Yeah. Let's hope he's not Mecole Hardman 2.0, right?
Yeah, I mean, you never know. It's Mecole Hardman or it's Tyreek Hill or there's somewhere in between, but certainly he's going to draw comparisons to Tyreek Hill early on here, given that that's just the name and what he was able to do with Patrick Mahomes. But you got to remember, I mean, they brought in Marquez Valdes-Scantling as a burner through free agency that didn't really pan out. Mecole Hardman had his cup of tea and came back, and it was a great story, in the Super Bowl. But he also, didn't pan out for what they wanted him to be. So just because you're adding a fast guy to the Chiefs doesn't necessarily mean it's going to pan out. And it'll be interesting to see where his value is, but I have to imagine it takes a big jump.
Well, yeah, and that was the conversation leading up to the draft is which Texas receiver do you see go first? Is it A.D. Mitchell? Is it Xavier Worthy? So it'll be interesting to see how that affects the draft. And now that we're full, we're just firing it off. We're going to get this thing rolling. It is a 2-minute per pick just to make sure everybody's got a chance to kind of look things through. It's super flex. So with six quarterbacks going in the top 12, you got to think we're probably going to see a significant amount of those 6 quarterbacks go in the first round. The interesting thing will be to see how Penix falls into this equation, seeing as we know he's not starting early. They paid Kirk Cousins way too much. The deal looks like it's probably at least 2 years of Kirk Cousins in Atlanta before they can get out. So it'll be fun to see kind of what transpires with that situation there. But obviously, Greg, you're on the clock at 1. It's kind of easy to pick here, I got to think.
Yeah, I had this situation in a league that we were discussing before the draft started and we got on the air here, and it's still going to be Caleb Williams, and I have to imagine in 99% of leagues out there, he's going to be the pick. He's going into a great situation that became even better with the wide receiver that they took that we'll talk about here, going in probably the first half of the draft here for us. So they're just building it right for their new quarterback there, as opposed to how they did dirty to Justin Fields. So
Yeah, absolutely. So Harrison went 2, Jayden Daniels 3, Drake Maye 4. I mean, this is pretty straightforward, what we're kind of expecting to see. Nabers at 5, Odunze at 6. I mean, this is that's not surprising to me in the least. If you're in a super flex situation, these quarterbacks and receivers really are your top 5, 6 players off the board.
Yeah, and it's going to vary based on your super flex league and how quarterback hungry some teams are. If one of these guys jumps up, McCarthy's in a good situation there where he's probably going to be starting some this first year. And if not long term, certainly he's in a great situation there with the weapons that they have. He just goes at the 108 here. And then it's really just going to be sort of league mate preference on what order these guys go with Nix and Penix in their situations. It looks like Nix probably will have a shot to start sooner with what they have. But at the same time, like you mentioned with Penix, it seems like they caught Kirk Cousins off guard. And that's never a good situation when a guy who just signed to that sort of a deal and his agent are having cause for concern over your first round draft pick.
Well, and the interesting thing, the wild card in me is those teams that still could look for some help at quarterback. A Raiders type situation where you have Minshew and you have Aiden O'Connell. It's like, okay, do they now go to a team that has a couple quarterbacks like in Atlanta who, for some reason, decided to take a quarterback when they just paid one?
Yeah.
It then makes me wonder, okay, do they maybe make a trade and try to do something? I mean, it wouldn't surprise me in the least.
There's going to be a whole bunch of scuttlebutt until they figure out what's going on. There's some rumors that it was the owner sort of jumping in and making a decision there with the Falcons on what's going on. And it seems like there's just one mess after the other now with, the Arthur Smith left, and we kind of thought we had some hopeful consistency, with a good head coach and front office on the same page. And now we're just throwing a big monkey wrench into the works there, which from a fantasy perspective, and if you're a Falcons fan, it's got to be unsettling.
Yeah, I mean, this doesn't bode well as you're trying to change the direction and move forward as an organization. I mean, it definitely seems a bit strange.
Yep.
And now we get to the sweet spot of where we don't exactly know, right? Like all these players outside of Penix have been drafted in round 1. The rest haven't been drafted yet. So now we're going to see, we're obviously putting Craig to the test here. He's either drafting Penix or going with a player who hasn't been drafted yet.
Yeah, I mean, it's super flex, so I'm going to go Penix. I was just trying to hold out a little bit to see if we get another pick or so here in the draft. My Cowboys went and did what I thought they would. They took an offensive lineman after trading down, which perfectly fine with that. That was one of the guys that they were supposedly high on and was mocked to them early on, and they certainly need the offensive line help. So it makes sense to trade down and get a third-round pick from your Detroit Lions to try to fill some other holes there.
Yeah, I mean, Detroit, I'm glad that Detroit was able to sit and wait and then go up and get their guy. But, I'm not afraid to throw a third out there and land the DB that we needed. And it lets Dallas do what Dallas needed to do, which they could have moved back and then got the player that they were looking for. So it seems like a win-win. I mean, let's just hope it plays out well for both of us moving forward. Although Dallas needs multiple offensive linemen,
Yeah.
Let's be honest.
Yeah, they do. And yeah, like you mentioned, 2-3 is where we start to have guys go that haven't yet been drafted, but these are the guys that have been often talked about, wide receivers. And now we got our first running back off the board.
There you go. I mean, this would be about that time. We're even if you're in a 12-team league, I mean, you're now early second round, so I would anticipate you starting to see running backs, and in Superflex, I guess maybe this is the sweet spot where you start maybe thinking somebody might look at Spencer Rattler, things like that. But the running backs and receivers are probably where we're going to see a lot in the second round, I would think. And I don't expect to see a tight end go until the third round, unless something crazy happens tomorrow night.
Yeah, and the order of these running backs coming off the board could vary a lot because it seems like there's a glut of 4 guys or so that could be the first one off the board in any of these drafts, and draft capital matters a lot. Also, what team they go to is going to matter a lot for fantasy managers out there. So this could very well be 2 different guys this early tomorrow going off the board in early mock drafts.
Yep.
Alrighty. Let me go back and see if we got any updates. I don't even know who's up next in the draft here. The Ravens are up.
Ravens are sitting in. Their pick is in, but
probably not a offensive skill position player, though.
I mean, you've heard people mock them a wide receiver, which, I mean, sure, I'd be surprised, but
anything can happen. We've certainly learned that once again, like we do every year with the NFL draft.
Yeah, for sure. And I'm going to, this is the sweet spot for running back. I mean, I like Corman, Braylon Allen. I'll finish it off by taking Braylon Allen because I really like that guy. I think he could be a really fun, depending on the situation, he could be real fun. So, and this is kind of what I expected. Second round, I would expect to see multiple running backs, and then your kind of next tier receivers. Keon Coleman is a guy that people were hyped on early. Troy Franklin is a guy that people have been interested in. No, Ravens went Nate Wiggins, so you got a corner for the Ravens, which makes sense. I mean, they needed that too. So, and that's it. Draft's over, at least for tonight. Thank you guys for hanging out. We appreciate the guys that were drafting with us. We are going to be doing this throughout the weekend, helping you get ready for your rookie drafts, which I'm assuming will start on Sunday, because I know all my leagues start Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, somewhere around there. So, Craig, what did you think about kind of these last few picks? Are these kind of the way you've expected?
Yeah, I mean, just with the unknowns, a lot of guys are going to get their running back that they like. And you see that, of course, it used to be all running backs early on, if not Superflex, of course, drafts. And with the way the running back has been valued by the NFL, but also the fantasy community, you're seeing a lot more of these guys fall, where you mix in the fact that this isn't a running back top heavy class. How often do you not see a running back go until, pick 15 or whatever it is, 14, 16, something like that. Not very often in rookie classes, but that's a mix of not knowing where guys go. And then also, like we said, the class that they have there. But I wanted to ask you what you think. How early does another quarterback have to go in the draft tomorrow to see another guy sneak into these first two rounds?
I mean, in my mind, Rattler has to go to Vegas, at least for me to feel comfortable thinking he's probably a second round. Shortly thereafter, Michael Penix. I mean, outside of that, I don't anticipate seeing a quarterback go tomorrow other than Rattler. I mean, when you think about the other guys that are there, the Learys and Joe Miltons of the world, those are guys that, have a tool or a trait that teams like, but are just not going to be drafting high. I mean, they're probably mid to late day 3 prospects. So Rattler's the only one I think could make that conversation for being an earlier second round pick if he lands in a spot where a team needs a quarterback or he could compete for a starting job in year 1 or 2. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, Spencer Rattler's the one that I like. I like his story, and he was left for dead sort of by the Devy community, fantasy community, and he had to earn his way back into it, and he did so with really poor weapons and really poor offensive line in college. And hearing him talk, he still has all the tools, but he was humbled. There isn't really another way to put it, which for a guy his age to be able to bounce back from that, I think says a lot. And I think that I know that he's someone I'm targeting in drafts if I can get him, certainly in the third round. But if he goes to a decent spot, it's going to have to be the second round. And I'm fine with that, even if he has to sit a while, because I think he has all the talent. And I like the fact that he's matured. There's other guys that I've heard mentioned, there's a lot of Jordan Travis love out there, but I think the injury hurts him as far as where he's going to be drafted. If he was healthy the whole time and Florida State made a run, he might be someone we were talking about earlier because he has that athletic upside, but with the injury, I don't think you're seeing any of that. And then it's guys like, Michael Pratt, who could be a fine step-in starter and, backup for a long time in the NFL with how smart he is and just that passer mentality, but he isn't the most gifted and he really isn't a runner, stuff like that. So
feels like a Jets backup quarterback.
Yeah.
He would not surprise me if the Jets drafted him day 3 and he was, Aaron Rodgers backup. But yeah, I'm with you. All right, folks. That's it. Night 1 is nearly in the books. We got the 49ers on the clock, and we're going to shut this down. We just want to give you guys a quick take on what the draft looks like post night 1 for your Superflex drafts. And we're going to be doing this all weekend. If you guys have questions, make sure you drop them in the comments. Follow us over on Twitter. You can find our work via at RotoHeat Fantasy. You can hit Craig and I up at RotoHeat Brad and RotoHeat Craig. We'll see you guys this weekend.